UK Nigeria Tech Hub is a new initiative by the UK government's Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sports to support the growth of the startups ecosystem in Nigeria. The UK Nigeria Tech Hub works to stimulate the local digital economy, support inclusive and sustainable economic growth and jobs using digital skills, and forge innovation partnership between local tech sector and international businesses. The hubs are one of the pillars of the broader Digital Access Program, which aims to catalyze digital inclusion across Africa. As a secondary benefit, it works in forging innovation partnership between local tech sectors and international businesses will lead to more trade and investments in the longer term, driving increased productivity and growth. Country Director, UK Nigeria Tech Hub, Honey Ogundeyi, who is tasked with being the main conduit for the UK government support of Nigeria tech ecosystem and the link with Nigerian and UK tech companies and investors. She joins me now via Skype from Ikoyi for more on this discussion. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start this way. What was it like at the UK Nigeria Tech Hub before COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, so as you rightly mentioned, the UK Nigeria Tech Hub, we focus primarily on three things. So the first one is around supporting startups, building their skills and capacity development. The second thing is around forging partnerships between international tech sectors and the Nigerian tech sector. And then the third is around strengthening the Nigerian tech ecosystem. So we have been very busy with all our programs, mainly different programs. So for example, in Kaduna, we trained 100 women around digital skills. In Lagos as well, we launched a product management school program, which trained up to 69 people to become product managers, amongst other events and programs which we work with actively supporting the growth of the tech sector in Nigeria. So it's busy times.
Really, really busy times. Now, can you share some of the work your beneficiaries have been doing even before the COVID-19 pandemic?
So I think one of the key things that's been really great about the tech sector is that you've seen the capacity of tech startups to really support in providing solutions around the current pandemic. We've seen a couple of our beneficiaries there as well being at the forefront of the fight against this in Nigeria. So for example, we have a startup like Mobi Health, which is a health tech startup and focuses on providing remote telemedicine support to people who are sick and ill from home, and they can access quality healthcare. That startup has partnered with both a network to increase distribution access and also partnered with NIMRS here in Nigeria as well to increase access to testing for people remotely. We've seen another startup, Niger Kids, which was one of our semi-finalists at our African Female Tech Founders, who has also partnered with the bank as well to make sure that kids continue to have access to education from home. This is alongside some of the work that we're seeing really great tech startups in Nigeria participating both in recovery phase, but also in the testing and diagnosis and the support of this pandemic. So we've been very busy supporting beneficiaries and as well as rolling out different programs which people and tech companies as well as other sectors can have access to in these very difficult times.
Indeed, I see a lot of work being done there. That's in relation to COVID-19. But in specifics, does the hub provide ongoing support to beneficiaries?
And so I think one of the key things that's been really key for us is looking at how we, transition our programs to virtual delivery and continue to support the industry at this time. And I'm very pleased to say that we've continued to do so. We started almost in the first week of the pandemic by rolling out a program, which was Ladies Who Launch, which trained 179 women tech businesses in Nigeria to make their businesses more digital skilled. So you can see that the UK government is really at the key in the forefront in terms of continuing the work at these times. And I think that especially with what is going on, and I see such a big impact for technology startups to have an impact and have a role to play. It's really key that we in our work at the UK Nigeria Tech Hub continue to provide the support that we do, both in terms of encouraging partnerships, giving them access to funding and grants in some cases, and also providing digital skills and capacities that can really help augment the startup's ability to continue to work and provide in these times.
The Tech Hub currently carries out or currently carried out a survey, or there's a survey on to understand the early stage founders and investors' response to COVID-19. Can you take us through what you really intend to achieve with this?
Yes, so in April of this year, we conducted a survey. We surveyed over 185 startups and investors together and to better understand what is the impact of COVID-19 on startups. So immediately the pandemic happened, we went to work supporting startups and talking to investors and keeping in contact with the ecosystem, working with DFIs as well and working with policy providers, including Nigerian government. But I think what became very clear and what kind of questions we were getting back was, what do startups need? Where are they feeling this? Where are they feeling the impact the most? And to be able to give answers, we always prefer to use it data and evidence based. And we conducted this survey, the results of which we just released this week. And the insights are really great. It both contains good news and bad news. I mean, I think in general terms, we can see that all startups and all investors have been affected by the pandemic. But I think what's really coming to play is to see how, in which ways, and what do startups need. So in areas like we're seeing some sectors are more affected than others. So for example, agriculture, education, startups, e-commerce as well, mostly because they are affected by supply chain disruptions, which is the lockdown economy has caused. We've seen other startups like health tech as well continue to thrive. From speaking to investors, I think some of the good news on that side is that we've seen that 69% of the investors are continuing to invest, which is, I think, is good. And they're also telling us, here are some sectors that we're really interested in. So they're more interested now in health tech. They're more interested in remote tech startups. And so I think that there'll be new opportunities for people who are working to solve the current problems that we find in these areas to get support. I think more worryingly, from the survey, we also see that most startups have only about 6 months runway left if they don't get access to any interventions or programs to support them. And now what does this mean for us? It means that, if startups are not able to survive this pandemic, then we're going to have a slowdown of growth in the tech sector. As you may know, prior to the crisis, the tech sector was one of the fastest growing sectors in the Nigerian economy. So I think it's really key here that we understand that startups are struggling and we look for ways and programs and interventions to continue to support their growth. If they can continue to grow, they will continue to hire people. In fact, most of them tell us they were planning to hire. And once they're able to do this, then we can continue to contribute to the growth of the economy. As you know, that's going to be really key going forward.
Okay, let's now share with us some key insights from this on both investors and the startups.
Yeah, so let's start from what we're seeing from the startup side, and I think that's really where it always, that's where it all kicks off.
True.
I think the first thing is, what are the business areas most affected? Startups are telling us. So, for example, they're telling us their customer and sales are affected, which means that their revenue has gone down. Investment and fundraising opportunities as well have been affected, and their business models. So, interestingly, we're seeing that almost 80% of startups are telling us they're looking at their business models now and looking to pivot them. So, in response to the crisis, they're now looking at how can we change our business model to either better respond to what opportunities, or in some cases, that business model just doesn't work in this current situation. We're also seeing how long can they survive without any intervention. That's around 6 months. That's particularly worrying. Around the COVID-induced shocks, which industries are worse hit? We're seeing agriculture, education, e-commerce. I think agriculture and education, those are two big sectors we need to pay attention to, because we know that the government as well is very focused on the growth of this sector. And even for us as all individuals, agriculture is really the bedrock of how we get our food and our food supply chain. So if this sector is very much affected, we need to look in terms of the programs and the interventions that we do to directly support that. We know that fundraising plans have been disrupted, and we're seeing that particularly affecting startups who haven't raised any sort of funding before. But I think more interestingly, what do startups need now? They're telling us that most of them want access to partnerships, they want access to networking opportunities, they want access to new markets. And this is really the crucial area in which the UK Nigeria's Tech Hub focuses on. Now, if we look at on the investor side, what are some of the quick highlights to see? I mean, I think 50% of the respondents are willing to invest over $1 million in a startup, which I think is encouraging. we're seeing that 69% of them are still looking to invest, which is good. And 64% of them have not walked away from a deal to date, which I think is also promising. So I think on the investor side, it's not as bad as we're seeing in some other economies. I think, of course, we see that, investing and fundraising plans have been affected, but we're also hearing from investors they're willing to continue to invest. On the startup side, we're seeing that health tech and some sectors are doing well and continue to thrive, and we're seeing that some other sectors, particularly supply chain heavy startups, are particularly affected. And so now it goes into our key work in terms of looking at how we bring on these insights. First of all, making it available to the general community, the tech ecosystem, policy, communities, hubs, and then looking now dialogue and putting together solutions that can really come to point in terms of solving some of these problems.
Indeed, before I let you go, now what are you doing with regards to COVID-19 saga, and what more should we expect moving on in 2020?
So the UK Nigeria Tech Hub is, as I said, at the forefront of looking at some of these programs and now looking to roll out our programs as a direct impact of having better understood what startups and investors are saying. So for us, that will involve programs where we look to continue our digital upskilling and education programs. We're rolling those out virtually, the first one of which will be happening next week. We're also looking at supporting hubs in a bigger, wider network. And we're also working as well with policy providers and also the federal government in different ways to basically see that we can continue to provide connectivity, and we can also continue to support their efforts in the impact of this pandemic on the tech industry as a whole.
It's really great to have you on the show, Honey Ogundeyi, Country Director, UK Nigeria Tech Hub. Thank you very much for your time. We sure will have you subsequently on the show to talk more about this moving on.